that window of opportunity between birth and 7, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is just such a time when the kids aren't inhibited, aren't scared to make mistakes. It's just natural to them
Yeah.
to speak languages.
They're
To acquire
curious.
language,
Their curiosity is much stronger than their fears of
Absolutely.
things. So just don't want to miss that time frame.
Yeah.
And today we didn't get any comments on cost, for
Yeah.
example. People would ask me, how much would it cost to do this or do that? So it's like it depends, right? What do you really want to do?
Yeah.
But I look at it as, are you already recording? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I look at this as like I would look at a financial instrument. It's an investment.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to say it so cold-bloodedly, but it's an investment in that if my outcome, my return is language fluency or social fluency, if we can say that. Now is the time when the stock is still very cheap. So even if I have to borrow money, if I know that the cost of my money is going to be much lower than the return that I'm going to get. In other words, if I'm sure that the return is going to be very good, then I'm going to borrow and do it. For the moment, that's not the case, but it could have been. And I do have 3 kids, so maybe it will be going forward. But I'm just throwing everything I can at it now because this is temporary. After all, I am thriving. I'm aiming for 10 years. If we can get 12, I'll be very happy. And after that, I think they're going to be good. Good enough, for all intents and purposes.
Good solid foundation. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I really liked was you mentioned that you started talking to your oldest before he was born. Actually, I'd not heard of somebody else doing that before. I did it myself with my oldest, who's now 17, and I only spoke to him in German at that point. And it was so funny that after he was born, he would not respond to my voice if I would speak to him in English.
Really?
And I think that might well be to do with the slide that you were showing about the different how the languages lie on the auditory spectrum, that he didn't recognize it as the voice that he was used to from pre-birth.
That's possible. I don't know. I mean, it's one way to look at the data.
So was that just some sort of intuitive decision that you made to do that, or had you read something about exposing kids?
No. It could very well just be superstition. I don't know. I mean, some people, put Mozart to cows and say that milk is tastier or whatnot. I don't know. I don't think there's any scientific evidence per se. But or maybe there is, because they do have the auditory organs all set up. But I'm just doing it. It's better to do it than not to do it.
Absolutely.
And also, it's for me to set up my habit of talking to them in Mandarin, right? Instead of when they're born, I start that habit. It's already done.
Yeah. I think that's one place where I personally went a little bit wrong, because when my son was born, I, as a German, had only just moved to the UK, so my focus was on improving my English while I was there. So I didn't speak German so much at home. Exactly. And that's unfortunately something that I can't go back and undo.
No.
But
it is
I guess parenting is a bit hit and miss anyway. You make mistakes.
That's right.
Is there anything that you've tried with your kids that didn't work out so well?
So far, I can't really think of anything specific. The only thing that my wife is starting to worry is that the reading may not be up to par for a normal kid of their age, or Ronnie at least. So he's 5. I don't think he's not advanced for sure, and we'll have to put in more consideration into how we want to do it. And right now we're looking at apps and whatnot. What kind of materials that we can use to strengthen that part of the language. But I always come back again to the hearing is my main focus. If we can do the reading, for me it's a kind of a bonus. But indirectly, if later, if we go to Taiwan next summer or the summer after that, and they can't read what's going on, and all the other kids are reading, that could hinder upon his social integration.
Right.
So we wouldn't want it to be so delayed that they can't do that. But yeah, that's sort of where I'm at in terms of reading. I just don't want them to be delayed too much.
Sure. So in terms of longer term thinking, obviously at the moment they have very much a structure of speaking a particular language with a particular person.
Yep.
Looking forward to maybe their teens. How do you think they'll be able to maintain all those languages? Because 5 languages is a lot to maintain on a regular basis.
So once again, I come back to the fact that by the time they're in the teens, most of my job is done.
Yeah.
In terms of languages.
The basis is there, sure.
Yeah, the foundation is rock solid. And at that point, if they want, if we want them to have a more in-depth knowledge of Spanish or whatnot, it could either be in terms of tutoring or other, because au pairs, maybe for my youngest kids, the au pair is still there, so the au pair will still be a friend to Ronnie, but not really a caregiver to Ronnie. So the exposure will be reduced.
And the time pressures with school will increase as well.
Exactly. But I don't think it will be such a bad problem. Clearly his Spanish won't be top notch at any given moment.
Sure.
But if he were to move to Spain or have start a job that requires a lot of Spanish, it'll be right back.
He'll have a head start, yes.
Yeah, it'll be right back there very quickly.
Okay.
Right. So not too worried in that sense. It's really the first 10 to 12 years that I just make sure that I do that part right.
Sure. And you are a strong advocate of one person, one language,
Yes.
Really, aren't you?
Absolutely.
For some people, that's not as feasible, maybe, because they can't bring au pairs in. How important do you think it is? What are the real advantages of it?
Okay, so when you say some people aren't, it's not feasible, are we talking financially? Are we talking, I don't know, space? Or are we talking, some people don't want au pairs because they don't want a foreign person coming to their home. I've heard that, a few times. And if that were the case, it's not a physical constraint that cannot be overcome. It's more of a cultural or psychological constraint, which I would just advise to make a decision on which is more important. Risk having a person in your house and have good target language acquisition, or not use that method. If it comes down to financial restraints, then there are alternatives. For example, bringing in a foreign student, exchange student. That's one way to do it. Usually these are high school kids, so you can't really expect them to help in the house so much, and they're going to be away during the day. But it's still, it won't cost you anything.
Sure.
Maybe just room and board. But depending on the association, if it's an AFS, they pay you for room and board. Food, not room and board per se. So there are alternatives, and again, it's conceptually, it is to create an environment where the kids will use these languages. It doesn't have to be au pairs. In our family, that's what works. Because we need, we have a relatively big house, we need some help. So it's cheaper than hiring a nanny 24/7. It's cheaper than hiring a cleaning lady.
Yeah.
Right? So I see it that way.
Yeah. I guess it's just one form of contextualized language learning, really, isn't it? And you can create other contexts as well if you want to.
That's right.
I guess.
I like hockey. I like skiing. So I like for my kids to do that. So I had to move back to Canada, to a place that allows me to do that very easily. Not everybody wants that, right? If you love soccer, maybe you already live near a soccer field, or you put your kids into a soccer team, soccer camp, whatever.
Yeah.
Right. So all these are just examples of how you can do it.
Sure. So, in terms of finding material for your kids, be it reading or watching, how do you go about that outside of interaction with au pairs, with people in school and friends?
So material, well, it's a lot of internet, obviously, and books. We have books in all 5 languages at home, and they before they go to bed, maybe one night I'll read them something. Maybe one night my wife will read them something. So books.
So are they chosen by you or by them, or how does that work?
Even actually my wife.
Yeah.
My wife does a lot of the choosing, in all the languages.
Yeah.
And I'm just a puppet.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm there to read to them in Mandarin. We're looking at apps to see, because my kids they love puzzles or they love riddles. So we try to find apps that allow that, games in
Gamified language learning.
in the
great.
specific language. They're having fun.
Yeah.
And, they continue doing it because it's fun.
Yeah.
Then it's a very small investment.
Yeah, one thing that we've found works quite well because it's very non-intimidating for them is finding a foreign language version of a book that they're already very familiar with.
That's right.
For example, the Gruffalo in German, or there's a book called The Day the Crayons Quit, which we recently bought in French for our daughter as well.
The Hungry Caterpillar,
yes,
we
we've
have
got
that in like 3-4 languages.
Yes, we've got 4 languages of that as well, yes.
Yeah.
Very popular, but it's very, very non-threatening because
right.
they're already okay
Exactly.
with the content.
Yeah.
Hungry Caterpillar are usually the days of the week as well.
Exactly.
So it's a very fun way for them to practice their language as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, they definitely also associate the language of that book to the person that they're talking to. So if daddy's reading a book, they're not going to expect a book in French or Spanish.
Yeah.
And so that part's also natural.
Right. It has to be natural. It has to be part of everyday life.
Exactly.
That's the important thing, isn't it?
We have to hide the master plan as long as possible, without them suspecting.
Make them think it's fun. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So one day, wait a minute, what's going on here? Too late.
Well, one of our cunning plans was to use some foreign languages as a secret code between us parents, so the kids wouldn't understand, and they then had the incentive of trying to figure out what we were saying, and that only then left us with less opportunity to have a secret language between us, which we then had to address and constantly be one step ahead of them. But that was another way that we incentivized them to tune into those different languages. Once they grasped German, we moved on to French. Once they grasped French, moved on to the next language. I think recently we've done Esperanto, but that's so easy to pick up that they're now cottoning onto that as well.
Wow. I mean, it's good. It's good they're learning new stuff.
Yeah.
Any bits and pieces that you can get is only beneficial.
Yeah.
So, with respect to Opal, if I've heard, criticism or resistance to Opal, sometimes it's that the parents, like, one would speak a language that the other wouldn't understand, then the person who doesn't understand sort of builds a paranoia, and that person doesn't want to be left behind in the discussions, with the children. That I've heard a few times. Luckily, that's not happened with my wife, even though she didn't speak any Spanish or Mandarin. I, for that part, I just say they're kids. The things that we say are very simple, and it's repetitive.
Yeah.
And if you open your ears and just follow along, you're gonna pick it up in no time.
Yeah.
Because think about it, if a 2-year-old is picking it up, there's no reason why you cannot pick it up, right?
Yeah, I think the only
exactly what happened.
issue that we've got with Opal really is that it might be holding some parents back from exposing their kids to other languages just because they think, I have not got access to a native speaker, therefore I can't teach them Spanish because I'm an English speaker, a German speaker, whatever.
So there you need to make a decision. Let's assume that if you do 3 languages with your kid, and and it goes well to a certain point, let's just assume that the kid will revolt against you and will only pick one at that point. So that's a certain level that you can probably get to, and then you'll have to probably forego the other two. And it could be random. And the other situation is if you use one language, but you'll likely go further with that language. It's a decision. Is this one language in depth more important than these three languages? More less in depth or shallow. It depends on how you want it and what you want out of the whole thing. For us, like I said, the 5 languages that we use are very important in every aspect. So we want each language to go to a very high level. So we find ways to have at least 5 parties, independent parties, to take care of these languages.
Yeah, I guess our approach is a little different in that our whole philosophy is built more around helping children learn how to learn a language rather than achieving a certain level in that language. And I guess going by the example of our 17-year-old now, his German skills, despite having a German dad, at least on paper, on his school certificate, weren't what we would have hoped for. But he's now got an incredible ability of picking up new languages that he wants to pick up because he's got that framework in place there. So I guess it very much depends on the goal that you've got,
exactly,
isn't it?
Exactly, and that's fine, of course. But what if your children don't like languages? You know, it could very well be that my children don't really care about learning new languages, but they will already have 5 that they will be able to use in their life. And even if they don't, it's not lost.
But it's definitely something that in polyglot circles, I think, should be more talked about, how to bring up the next generation of polyglots and having that discussion about it. Because as with anything in parenting, it's a lot of trial and error. And if you can avoid some of the errors that other people have made and pick up on their success stories.
But it's really this dinosaur way of thinking, I think, that even Christina Cunningham in her talk, all these investments finally in getting students in the EU to learn a second or third language, but the proficiency is still so low because they're still using I guess the old way of going about it. So can't just go with brute force. You have to change the strategies and embrace new ways of doing it. I guess.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time.
Well, thank you.
Lovely
Thank you for having me.
you.
It's an honor.
My screen's gone off.
Did not record.
Should still be recording, yeah.